Hey, Goat Jesus. Oh, I know you, Goat Jesus. I know you.
Hey there guys, it's Goat Jesus here. I just wanted to talk to you about certain things that I'm passionate about and maybe give some insight into my thought process while I watch shows. So here you go. I figure a good way to get into film and talking about film on a large scale is to first break apart storytelling. A good way to do that is to focus on shorts. A short film, at its core, is designed to make you want more, to make you feel something significant in a small time frame. Short films are probably the most pure form of storytelling there is, or at least that's what I think. When shorts are made, especially by Eastern teams, they tend to be emotionally driven. Usually they rely on a few tightly woven themes to propel themselves forward. My favorite shorts also tend to involve one or two characters as a central focus so that each of them gets properly developed. Some examples of this would be Makoto Shinkai's work like She and Her Cat or Crossroads. For something thematically sound, check out House of Small Cubes, which is another fantastic film.
Possibly the quintessential example of this very type of thing is the amalgamation of animated shorts called There She Is.
I'm going to briefly analyze what makes There She Is so good. If you aren't familiar with it, I've linked it in the description. So just come back when you're done watching, okay? There She Is absolutely stunning from virtually every angle. It manages to lure in its audience with certain expectations. From the outside, it comes across as a basic comedy with light romantic elements, but the further you get into it, the more heavy it becomes. It catches you off guard, using its distinct visual aesthetics and keeping you hooked until its very memorable conclusion. The first act introduces the inherently racist world to the viewer in a very light way as to not give away the impact for what happens later on. The two main characters, Doki and Nabi, are introduced mundanely coexisting within that world. The first step is a self-contained story, but on the whole acts as a brilliant setup for its future parts. The second act is dedicated to having fun with those characters in step one while expanding upon the cast and universe. This gives the audience quiet time.
Without these pacing contrasts, everything becomes a numbing blur of relentless action, which winds up being fatiguing and not very fun after a while.
Quiet time helps along with the third part to strengthen the relationship between Doki and Nabi, giving context for what's at stake. Shit hits the fan in part 4, which has its world come to its logical conclusion as the two leads are shunned for their taboo interracial relationship. Political factions form and make the two characters into representations instead of persons. The finale has Nabi reject those factions in favor of reclaiming his relationship with Doki. The message at the end of the day is, two people loving each other is the only thing that matters. Don't let the world change how you feel. There She is absolutely brilliantly structured. The layout of the narrative spends most of its time being concerned with making the characters understandable before revolving everything around its core relatable theme, which is the individual and societal response to taboo relationships. This core theme is mainly going to appeal to people who are oppressed with their relationships. This is a very good thing since it covers such a broad demographic.
Even if the story is not directly relevant to the viewer, There She Is manages to still get to its audience, since many are bound to know of someone who is affected by these issues. It doesn't even come across as having an agenda, since it uses animals to communicate its message.
The series also chooses a silent format. This is quite popular with short films for a reason. The lack of any dialogue in the shorts lets the audience slip into the events and characters much more easily. The characters don't have to say anything because the viewer will apply their own dialogue mentally. It also allows the visuals to tell the story and become even more universal since there's no assigned language. Hardly anything gets lost in translation and the core story remains intact. Everyone gets a personalized experience. The thought that goes behind the story structure is extremely important to how we relate and understand the characters and the message. Kyoukai is an amalgamation of feature-length films, and I would say that they're definitely excellent, but not because the story is good. In fact, the structure of the story is quite bad. Even though There She is less ambitious, I'd argue that it communicates its message better than the Kyoukai films because of its simplicity. There's an excellent quote by Mamoru Hosoda that I think communicates exactly what I'm getting at here.
While working on Howls, I realized being simple and clear was more satisfying to deliver the message. Even if it looks better, complicated things can't reach the audience as well as simple ones. Simplicity is virtue. Complexity, of course, can work, but it's very hard to pull off.
The Kyoukai films choose to be out of chronological order, each of the first 5 taking place sporadically throughout its narrative timeline. I can see why they chose to make the first movie in media res, since that creates a sense of interest in the viewer, but beyond that, I feel like it's mainly used just to keep the audience thinking about things arbitrarily, like a gimmick. There's no reason to think that it couldn't have been written in order of events and made to work that way. I understand that it's just following the adaptive structure of the original books that they were based on, but I like to think of film adaptations as existing separately from the source material, so there's room to improve or change things. Memento did something similar, but it actually had narrative purpose, and it used its chronological confusion to give the audience a certain disposition towards specific characters before breaking expectations about those characters in later scenes. It puts us in the shoes of the main character and how he feels about other characters at any given moment in time. Really, the only time Karno Kyoukai manages to capture any true feeling between characters is the fifth film, Paradox Spiral. The dynamic between Shiki and Enjo is focused on for the majority of that film, and the contrast between their flaws and what makes them who they are is excellently displayed. Karno Kyoukai isn't narratively impressive. The thing that it really nails is the direction. Pausing it in many places will reveal sloppy keyframing. What really makes it stunning is its cinematography. Take this tribute to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, for example. The reason this is used in both films is to indicate the failure of memory. It communicates through visuals the feeling of something fading away and finding yourself in a new moment. That kind of cinematography is something that I think hardly anything tries to even remotely do, but it does it really well in Karno Kyoukai. I cannot stress how important directing like this is. Technicality can only get you so far without a thought process behind it. Paradox Spiral also has fight scenes which are hailed by many as being brilliant, but they aren't technically good looking, so what makes people impressed? When Shiki fights Arya, one could see it as a 3DS Max hallway with a panning camera, but instead of the camera disorienting the viewer or it looking cheap, these assets are used to imply the impacts of movement. It's as if the camera were the characters. When Shiki slashes her katana, the camera follows suit. It lends itself to so much weight and power that it doesn't even matter if it's technically cheap or not. Karno Kyoukai has also managed to master the use of color, whether it be the blue and oranges that are used as complementary colors in the scene with Arya, or the green lighting at the beginning of overlooking view with sickly red blotches of blood as its complementary color so that it can starkly contrast with the green lighting and make everything stick out. Colors are used in production to define certain aspects further. Black and white were used back in the early days of film. Lighting was the only thing that could help create an atmosphere. With color, an extra dimension was added to what you could do with tone. Akira is a great example of what I'm referring to with its clever use of color. It chooses red as its focal point and dilutes everything else. Red is a symbol of violence, representing anger and blood. Using that as a focal point works for its oppressive world. Sure, you don't have to go for a symbolic or atmospheric edge by using color, but it certainly is not a plus in my book if you don't. Mirai Nikki used a clusterfuck of colors and made itself look incoherent most of the time. How can it say anything, and how can we feel anything if it's everything all at once? There she is, understands color. It chooses a very limited palette to achieve its style and then subverts it by having it fade in and out to communicate certain feelings about events. A Single Man also managed to do that sort of thing, but I would absolutely love to see more ambitious works done with anime and animation. I just wanted to kind of give insight into my thought process, and I've linked a few short films that I love in the description, so you guys should totally check it out. But thanks so much for listening, and I'm really sorry that this was basically just a watered down version of what I had before, but I hope you could get something out of it. Goat Jesus out.